Welcome back. Welcome back to the course. We are in week 4, part 2. We'll continue looking at the fake news thread, looking at what is fake news, how can you detect fake news, what are the different data sets that are available, how large is the fake news problem on social media, what are the different ways by which companies are trying to solve this problem. All of that is what is our goal for this week, and the next week is also actually. I hope you're enjoying the class. It's like a good point in the class where we can do some reality check on how you're enjoying the class and stuff like that. So again, any questions, feel free to send it to us. So the focus for this part particularly is going to be the different types of fake news that are going on. Right? Again, keep in mind these are ways for you to understand what types of fake news are there. And of course, our goal, right? Knowing what type of different fake news is not the goal for the course, right? The goal is, can you actually detect it? Find methods to use what we have learned on what different types of fake news are there, and then detect these different types of content. So next week, I think we'll look at different words. I think in some parts of the class I mentioned this, but different types of words that has been going on for the word fake news itself. Credibility, misinformation, fake news, disinformation, manipulated content, right? So all different types of words have been sort of connected, rumor, right? Connected to the fake news. So alternate news, right? So non-credible news. I'm looking for copies of the New York Times. That would be in the fiction section, right? So alternative news is ways by which you see information like non-credible, rumor, hoax, that information are getting spread. Let's see some examples, right? News satires, right? It is a form of a literary genre that takes the form of newscast and uses humor, irony, and exaggeration to critique political, social, or economic facts. I think these are sort of ways in which programs, TV programs, radio shows, all of them have been going on for a long time, taking up some news and making fun of it, right? That's not new. But what is new in social is that the spread, the volume, the velocity in which it spreads, and the kind of impact it can have on people. Because people are believing these content, what impact can it have, right? So in this case, if you see New York Times, so essentially the goal is that taking up something that is happening and having a fun side of it and using that to spread the information is what is this news satires type of news is, right? The news reported by New York Times reads that NFL playoff led to win due to turn down possession advantage possessed by the winning team. I think this has been there for some time. The win resulted in an outcry among fans of opponent that led the NFL to change the overtime rules. And if you see, there are tweets talking about NFL owners passed 2 other rules by Indianapolis and Philadelphia amends Rule 16 to allow both teams an opportunity to possess the ball in overtime in the possession, right? So having sort of some news, some action that is happening in the real world and turning it around and using fun to to talk about it is what this type of news is. Even this one, right? Same information was re-reported by the Onion, a satirical website, humorously. So if you look at this, this rule, which will be implemented next season and will apply to the playoff games, including the Super Bowl, means that no one will have to watch their team lose just because the other team played better. That simply wouldn't be fair, right? So these kind of things make it different types of news that get spread, something real world that happens, and then there are different versions of this news that shows up. So it's a literary parody is the literary work that draws the attention of the audience by relying on the comic effect introduced by the news. The non-factual information is used to inject humor into the news, right? So again, what is a goal for us? The goal for us is not to deeply understand what is parody and satires, all that, but how do you take some aspect of it and figure it out through a program, figure it out through social media data, all that. Satires and parodies are an integral voice of journalism, of course. The core content of satires is based on the actual news stories, whereas in this case, content is parody, is fabricated. So you will see some examples also. It aims to present the news direct commentary, but in a hilarious manner. Parody picks up the of the issue, ludicrousness of the issue, and makes it slightly bigger, accentuates them by creating entirely fictitious stories around something that's going on. All right. So this example is also in something that you will see that was published, what people may have wanted to see. That's what this kind of thing. The presented issue is unreal, which is unprecedented. Trump hastily departs White House, ending crisis, but many Americans, possibly most, would like to see in future. This is a classic example of parody where the audience's wish is picked. So something that people would like to see, people would like to want to know, that information is picked, and that is kind of presented as a news article. Then there is this fabrication, right, which is represents entirely false articles. So if you see, where are we going? Just to give you also for you to understand, we are going from the aspect of real thing that happens, some made fun of it, things may not happen, report it, now completely false information that are represented, right? That's where we are now. False articles, that is those with no factual basis but is presented in the style of actual news to mark legitimacy. So we're moving in some spectrum if you look at it, right? Some action to no action, but still spreading, right? Something happens and then there is spread of that information. Right? So this is, it is made up story. Daughter of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has seemingly admitted that Pizzagate, the conspiracy theory born out of the WikiLeaks emails allegedly exposing politicians running pedophile rings, is real on her Twitter on Thursday. Right? Pedophile is basically people who abuse children. So this is a fabricated news. It's made up story and has no basis in reality. To identifying such news is checking whether other websites report, right? So later part of this week, we will actually look at tips to identify fake news, right? So in this, here is a tip, which is such news is checking whether other websites. So one of the common methods that you could use or methods that people have used is that take some keywords from here, go to Google, right? Put the word in Google and see the results from Google. Right. Take the results from Google and then see whether in top N such a post actually exists. If so, that's probably real. All right. So that is, I mean, one can question that, oh, is the Google result enough for checking this? It's just a measure. So now what you can do is that take this. So there's also another idea called TF-IDF. Term frequency, inverse document frequency, which is basically finding out how much of, what are the keywords that are available in a document and how frequently they are used in that document, how frequently they are used in the entire corpus that you can look at all of that. So you find a set of keywords that are, for example, let's take in this article, you can say that Hillary Clinton, Pizzagate, WikiLeaks, politicians, pedophile, and Twitter, let's take. Those are the keywords that you will take and put it into Google, see whether this article shows up. If this article or a similar article talking about this incident shows up, then probably that incident is real. One could argue that, look, you could actually poison the Google search results, and therefore it will be hard to find out whether it is fake or not. Yes, possible, but it's going to be hard to do that also. And particularly if you really look at these results that it is showing, if these results were, let's take Hindu, Times of India, right? Think newspapers like that, which has high credibility, then I think it's less likely that it's going to be fake. You understand the idea? The idea is to just take some external source to make a judgment on whether this is fake or not. The next one, manipulated content. Manipulated content is defined as news stories that perform modifications in the original text, image, or videos to present false narrative. So now you're moving a little ahead, which is to say that, look, event happens, everything is there. I just take some parts of the event and then manipulate it, either text or the image or the video or the voice or something like that. So in this example, if you see Mark Zuckerberg is holding a thank you note, and when Facebook reached 500 million users worldwide, he was holding it to celebrate the success. There were many employees of Facebook did this. But what happened in terms of manipulated content is that people actually misused, people turned the image and it's not 20 cents, right? Change Brazil. So you can basically change any content here and present it as the Mark Zuckerberg is presenting it, right? To demonstrate Mark Zuckerberg's support to Brazilian protest. This is a classic example of manipulated content where fabrication is introduced in the modality text, image, or video to deceive the audience. So that is another type of fake news that you will see on social. False connection. It's a form of a fake news where headlines, visuals, or text do not support each other. That said, the parts of the news are legitimate, but the connection between them results in fabrication. So again, now the idea here is that the parts of the news may be true, right? Which is very similar to manipulated content. The other parts of the image is probably true. Only the note that Mark Zuckerberg is holding is being changed. Right? So if you look at this, daily news, false connection, a snapshot of New York Times daily newspaper, the terrifying headline and is sure to catch readers' eyes. Sugar is addictive as cocaine, heroin, studies suggest. Right, so this is basically, I think clickbait, right, if you are aware of what this is. Right? Clickbaits are basically the idea where you get the attention of the user and get their clicks, right? Baiting them so that they open the article, they open the email, they open the SMS, they open the social media thumbnail that is showing, YouTube thumbnail it is showing, right? YouTube thumbnail text, YouTube thumbnail image, all of that could be manipulated, could be used in a way that it could be, it could get the user to open the content, right? On reading, we might discover that the theory claimed in the headline has only been proven to exist in rats. So this says sugar as addictive as cocaine, heroin suggests, but if you read the article, it says our evidence from an animal model suggests that blah, 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 sugar has creating the same effect as cocaine. Right? So therefore, this type false connection is partially manipulated content, and the content within the news that is spreading, within the news that is presented, is actually not correct. False context. False context refers to news stories sharing genuine information with false contextual content, right? So this is false context is changing the context of the present information that is there. There's probably something you would have seen. My guess is you would have seen all of these types in some of your already social experience. Content consumption, right? Image is something, text is something else. There's no relationship between the text and the image, right? A video of a bridge in Indonesia collapsing in 2011. The video was released on 5th of April 2021. Right? So this is false context, right? So if you see a video showing a bridge collapsing in Assam due to the rains began circulating on Facebook on 17th May 2022, right? Flash, disaster in Assam as a bridge collapsed due to rains, right? So this image and this image are same. Some people decided that they can use this as an Assam bridge collapse, started manipulating the context, right? The rains are happening. Assam has rains, and now the information that is taken from a different event is presented here. The video has no relationship to the floods of Assam. The manipulators tagged the old video from the Indonesia to fool the readers. Right. Imposter content. Imposter content refers to stories that are published by fake news websites trying to imitate legitimate news agencies. Now this is completely a bogus website which is actually publishing content as though it is real. The snapshot pretends to be ABC News, but it is not, right? So it kind of presents the information like ABC News. One tip to identify imposter content is to check the website source on Google. If the domain URL does not match, the website might be an imposter. So again, I said this example before, take the word, search, take the set of words, search it and all of that. There's also another one called as Web of Trust. I mentioned this in the fake news table of features in the last part, where Web of Trust is one of the source, where you can take the URL and send it to this Web of Trust which will actually return you some values, giving the credibility of the URL. For example, if you think about credibility, right? Let's take stanford.edu, stanford.edu.in. I know that's the right URL, but let's take that. That's the right URL. IIT.ac.in. So stanford.edu, it can't be IN, right? Okay, stanford.edu is the URL. IIT.ac.in. And let's take some student. You are one of the student. Let's take Rakesh Goel.in, right? I mean, Rakesh Goel can be very popular. What I'm saying can be contradictory, but here's my web of trust, or the logic that I was going to give about credibility from the website point of view. This may be highly credible, moderately credible, low credible, in relative sense, that's all. Okay. So this is what web of trust can provide you, which is how long the URL has been. So essentially, it is just looking at when the URL was created, or domain was created in another sense, right? Domain creation date can play a great source for finding out whether the domain is legitimate or not. So that's what the tip here is. So now when you're actually looking at social data, when you want to analyze whether it's fake and there is a URL, you know what to do with it. Deepfakes. So deepfakes are synthetic media in which a person in an existing image or a video is replaced with someone else's likeness. So this, I'm sure you would have seen becoming very popular during Obama time. There was videos that were floating around with speech that he did not give, but the video showed that as though he's giving the speech, all that, right? So this is phenomenally interesting and successful methods now to create deepfakes. Original image and the deepfake image on the right, inconsistent eye blink, mismatched earrings, some features lack definition. So you can clearly see if these are images that are kept together, deepfakes that are created. There are ways to actually find it. I mean, I'm sure if I were to teach a class how to create deepfake, I'll tell you what are the methods to actually create this from here. But the point is, there are videos that are getting generated on social, and popularized on social, which are actually deepfakes, where the voice and the video are not the real people. Right. So there's another theme, which is some of the things that I said now can be put together to create some framework. I think I use some of the words that are in this slide before, but let's look at the framework itself, right? This is information disorder, which is basically arguing why do we believe actually fake news, and what parts of fake news are we looking at, right? So this part is falseness, right? This part is intent to harm, right? Just think about it, right? There may be intended harm by a post, whereas news satires, all that, there may not be any intended harm with the content that is getting generated, or at least the initial intent by the creator is not to harm people. Right. This is misinformation, which is completely falseness. This is malinformation, which is the goal is to only harm people. And then there is disinformation, which is a combination of intent is to harm, and there is also false information that's sent. A conceptual framework to examine different types of fake news by identifying them as misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation. So essentially, again, it's just a framework that is to help understand what is going on. So the question is it disinformation if somebody says, okay, is it disinformation? Is there a harm in it? How much of falseness is in it? Is it only falseness? Is it just only intent to harm? Those are the questions that you should ask to find out which category does it belong to. Disinformation, right? When false information is said with the intent to harm. So again, we are looking at here the creation of such stories to motivated by three factors: to make money, to have political influence, either foreign or domestic, or to cause trouble for the sake of it. Some parts of it is to intend to harm. Disinformation here, the example was tweeted by Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential elections. And then USA crime statistics. So here, if you look at it, the statistics are, some of these numbers are not right. So if you really go look at the source, what is wrong with this post, if you really want to look at it, if you look at the statistics are actually not right. Image is meant to provoke fear and feed the racist narrative of the violent young black man. But then the real problem with this is the statistics are actually wrong. The statistics available for 2015 from FBI demonstrates that the numbers have been reversed. Whites killed by blacks and whites killed by whites, right? So numbers are misplaced, and the narrative is to show something, which is what is a manipulation here. And essentially, they have created a source called Crime Statistic Bureau, which doesn't even exist. Right. Misinformation, right? Misinformation, if you go back. Right. Misinformation. Intent is not to harm people. Right? When there is no intent to harm, that's where misinformation shows up. Here, if you see, when false information is shared with no intent to harm. When a reader encounters a false story and shares without realizing it is false, socio-psychological factors drive the sharing of misinformation. So this must be just some funny stories people are sharing. For example, I remember, I remember seeing false information or misinformation, like at some point in time during early days of Twitter, I think 2011, 12, when we got into this space, there was this tweets going around saying there's a panther in Hema Malini's home or something like that, right? Very interesting, and to see actually how people are using the social data, social platform to spread these kind of content, right? If you remember, I also talked about crocodile I think in the last part, where during floods in Chennai, there's a picture of crocodile floating around on the streets, right? So the idea is that there's no intent to harm, right? But finding them is actually going to be hard, right? Finding what is harm, does it have an harm intent in it, is going to be a little hard. But for now, if you keep it a little abstract, we should be able to find them. This is Alec, a 25-year-old from Ontario, drove a rented white van through a Yonge Street in Toronto, killing 10 and wounding over a dozen more. In the chaotic aftermath of the attack, Natasha Fatah, so you will see that next slide is published competing eyewitness accounts, which is talking about one tweet saying something, the other one saying the opposite. Wrongly, as it turned out, identifying the attacker as an angry and Middle Eastern, and another correctly identifying it as white. Right. So this is a tweet that is talked about in the last slide, which is breaking witness to truck ramming into pedestrians, tells local Toronto TV station that the driver looked wide-eyed, angry, and Middle Eastern. Right, so look at this, 716 retweets and 836 likes. And on the other side, another eyewitness to the Yonge and the Shefford incident describes van's drivers as white, intentionally hitting people, describing it as a terror attack. Right? And you can look at time. 1:36 p.m., 23rd April, 2:19 p.m., 23rd April, and the number of comments, retweets, right? Comments, retweets, likes. All of this could be used to make some judgment about the content. This graph, we spent a lot of time in the last part. Similar graph. We looked at the Boston data, right? So the idea is, in this case, if you see this tweet, which is not the right tweet, is here, actual tweet is here. Very similar to the graph that I had actually shown you earlier, where the true information starts late and the false information starts very fast, and the growth is faster. But here, the same person is tweeting a true information and a false information. Initial tweet, which wrongly identified the attacker as Middle Eastern, received far more engagement than the accurate one in roughly 5 hours after the attack. The tweet containing correct information did not perform much better over a longer horizon up to 24 hours after the attack. So I think this is also sometimes a very critical question to ask: why and how these fake news actually spread much faster than the real news. Something gets added to this unreal, probably the clickbait nature, the citizens or users and human behavior is being manipulated in the way that the content is presented, all that. That's probably the reasons why the fake news spreads. This is happening compared to this. The information shared is genuine, but the intent is to cause harm, right? Malinformation. How the Russians hacked the DNC and passed its emails to WikiLeaks, right? So here the goal is that the intent is to cause harm, right? So intent is to, so let's go back. Malinformation, intent is to cause harm. Leaks, harassment, hate speech. Disinformation is false content, imposter content, manipulated content, fabricated content, but there's a mix of falseness and harmful intent, whereas misinformation is completely non-harmful, false connection, misleading content. So if you see, that is what we started as information disorder. Right? So we will continue with the fake news topic as part of this week. I will stop this part here. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us.